The research vessel Horizon drifted silently at the edge of the solar system. Captain Choi Mai-rei stood at the observation window, watching the distant stars. She had spent 15 years in space, but this moment felt different. Her crew had found something that would change everything. "Captain, the object is definitely artificial," said her science officer. "It is not from Earth." Mai-rei walked to the main screen. The object was small, no bigger than a car. It was made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered its surface. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. "Send a message to Earth," Mai-rei ordered. "Tell them we have made first contact." 3 months later, the probe sat in a secure facility on Earth. Kim Yuna, the world's leading expert in languages and communication, had been working on it day and night. She was a quiet woman with tired eyes, but her mind was sharp. She had finally decoded the probe's message. President Han Ji-woo called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Leaders from every nation gathered in the Great Hall. Yuna stood before them, her hands slightly shaking. "The probe contains a message," Yuna said. "It comes from a civilization that calls itself the Dominion. They control over 200 star systems. They have been watching us for decades. What do they want?" President Han asked. Yuna paused. She did not want to say the next words. "The message is simple. It says, submit or be harvested. The Dominion views younger species as resources. They take what they need: workers, biological material. They have done this to thousands of civilizations before us." The room fell into chaos. Some leaders demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to hide. A few suggested surrender. President Han raised her hand for silence. "We need time," she said. "Time to understand what we are facing. Time to prepare." Admiral Park Do-yeon stood up. He was an old soldier with gray hair and a face marked by years of service. "We cannot fight them directly. Not yet, but we can build. We can prepare. And we can hope that they underestimate us." 2 weeks later, a Dominion ship arrived in Earth's orbit. It was massive, 10 times larger than any human vessel. The entire world watched as a shuttle descended to the United Nations building. The Dominion ambassador was called Kellis. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. Behind him walked 2 soldiers in dark armor, their weapons visible. Kim Yuna served as the translator. She had learned their language from the probe's database. As she listened to Kellis speak, she noticed something strange. Sometimes, just for a moment, Kellis would pause. His eyes would show something that looked almost like discomfort. Then it would disappear. "The Dominion offers you a choice," Kellis announced to the assembled leaders. "You will provide workers for our mining operations. You will provide biological samples for our research. In return, you will be allowed to continue existing. This is generous. Most species are simply taken." President Han kept her voice calm. "We need time to prepare our people, to organize the transition. We request one standard galactic cycle." Kellis studied her for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You wish to delay. You hope to find a way to resist. Every species tries this. None succeed." He paused. "But we will grant your request. One cycle. Use it however you wish. The result will be the same." After Kellis left, the real work began. In public, Earth pretended to prepare for submission. Factories appeared to produce goods for the Dominion. Training centers opened to prepare workers. News reports discussed the transition. In secret, something else was happening. Admiral Park Do-hyun led a project called Ember. Deep beneath the moon's surface, hidden in asteroid bases, Scattered across the outer planets, humanity began to build. They studied the Dominion probe, learning its technology. They designed new weapons. They prepared for a war they might not survive. Choi Mai-rei left a research vessel and joined the weapons program. Her brilliant mind turned from exploration to destruction. She did not sleep much anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought about the words, submit or be harvested. Kim Yuna continued to study Dominion communications. She learned about their history. They had conquered over 2,000 species. Most were now extinct. The rest served as slaves. The Dominion had never faced a species that could challenge them. They had grown comfortable, lazy, certain of their power. One night, Yuna sat alone in her office, reading intercepted messages. She found something interesting. The Dominion soldiers often complained about their commanders. The slave species sometimes whispered about rebellion. The empire was strong, but it was not perfect. She made a note in her file. They can be beaten. We just need to find out how. President Han Ji-woo visited the secret facilities once a month. She walked through the underground factories, spoke with the scientists and soldiers. She saw the weapons taking shape. She understood what they meant. If we use these, she said to Admiral Park, we will not just be defending ourselves. We will be doing something that cannot be undone. Park nodded slowly. I know, but they gave us no choice. They came to our home. They told us we would be harvested like animals. They think we are weak because we wanted peace. He looked at her with old, tired eyes. We were peaceful because we chose to be, not because we had to be. Han was silent for a moment. Then she said, build everything. Prepare everything. And pray we never have to use it. But prayers would not be enough. 6 months later, the stars began to darken, and humanity learned that the Dominion did not keep its promises. The Dominion fleet arrived 6 months early. There was no warning. One moment, the sky was empty. The next moment, 300 warships filled the space around Earth. They blocked out the stars like a dark curtain. High Commander Vorath sat in his command chair, watching the small blue planet below. He had done this hundreds of times. The waiting period was always the same. Young species would panic, beg, or try to fight. The result was always the same: submission or death. The humans requested more time, his officer reported. They are not ready. Vorath smiled. It was not a kind smile. They were stalling, hoping to find a way out. There is no way out. Begin the harvest. On Mars, the human colony had grown to 2 million people. Families lived in dome cities. Children played in artificial parks. Scientists studied the red soil. They had built a new world from nothing. The Dominion destroyed it in 3 hours. Their weapons turned the domes into fire. The cities became graves. 2 million people died without ever understanding why. Commander Lee Tai-ho was on Earth when Mars fell. He watched the news reports in horror. His sister had moved to Mars 5 years ago. She had 2 children. He had planned to visit them next month. Now there was nothing left to visit. This is what happens to species that delay, Vorath announced in a broadcast to Earth. Mars was a warning. Cooperate, and your main planet will survive. Resist, and you will join them. But the Dominion was not finished. They wanted to make sure humanity understood their place. They chose a city on Earth to serve as an example. They chose Seoul. Lee Tai-ho was stationed at a military base outside the city. He had grown up in Seoul. His parents still lived there. His childhood home was in a quiet neighborhood near the river. He had planned to retire there someday. The Dominion ships appeared over the city at dawn. People looked up, confused. Some thought it was a show of force. Some thought negotiations were happening. Then the weapons fired. Taiho watched from the base as his city burned. He tried to call his parents. There was no answer. He tried again and again. The line was dead. Everything was dead. When the fire stopped, 3 million people were gone. The city that had stood for centuries was ash. The Dominion had made their point. Taiho stood in the ruins 3 days later. He found what remained of his parents' neighborhood. There was nothing, just black ground and silence. He knelt in the ash and did not cry. Something inside him had changed. The man who loved peace was gone. Something colder had taken his place. Across the world, Kim Yuna monitored Dominion communications. She worked without rest, listening to every signal she could find. One night she discovered something that made her blood freeze. The Dominion had done this before, not just to a few species, to thousands. Over 2,000 civilizations had faced the Dominion. Most were completely destroyed. Their planets were stripped of resources. Their people were worked to death or used for experiments. A few survived as slave races, serving the Dominion forever. Humanity was not special. They were just the next in a long line. The Dominion saw them as animals, resources, nothing more. Yuna brought her findings to President Han Ji-woo. The president read the reports in silence. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were shaking. "They have done this for 10,000 years, Yuna said quietly. No one has ever stopped them. President Han stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the emergency shelters being built. Families were moving underground. Children who would never see the sun again. "Then we will be the first," she said. That night, President Han addressed the world. Every screen on Earth showed her face. She did not look afraid. She looked calm, determined. 3 days ago, they destroyed Sol. 3 weeks ago, they destroyed Mars. They want us to surrender. They want us to accept that we are nothing but resources to be harvested. She paused. The world held its breath. I will not tell you that we will definitely win. I will not promise that everything will be okay. But I will tell you this. We will not go quietly. We will not submit. We will not let them take our children without a fight. She held up a paper. This is a list of names. The names of every city they have destroyed. Every person they have killed. I want you to remember these names. Because one day, they will pay for every single one. She set the paper down. Her voice became harder. They wanted resources. They thought we would count the cost and decide to give up. They were wrong. We have already counted the cost. We have already paid it in the blood of our families. Now it is their turn to pay. That night, Admiral Park Do-yeon received the order he had been waiting for. Project Ember entered its final phase. The hidden factories increased production. The secret bases activated their systems. The weapons that humanity had built in desperation began to wake. On the moon, Choi Myre worked through the night. Her team had created something terrible. A weapon that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. It used the enemy's own technology against them. Their faster-than-light drives would become bombs. Is it ready? Park asked through the communication screen. Myre looked at the weapon. It was small. It did not look dangerous. But she knew what it could do. Almost. I need 6 more months. You have 4. Myre nodded. Then I will make it work in 4. Deep in space, High Commander Voreth felt satisfied. The humans were behaving exactly as expected. Some were fleeing underground. Some were trying to negotiate. Their military was hiding. They had been broken. He did not notice the small ships moving in the darkness. He did not see the quiet preparations happening in the asteroid belt. He did not realize that he had made the worst mistake of his long life. He had taught humanity to hate. And humanity was a fast learner. 18 months had passed since Sol burned. The Dominion controlled Earth's orbit. Their ships patrolled the solar system. They believed they had won. They were wrong. Commander Lee Tai-ho sat in the captain's chair of the Shadow, the first ship in what would become known as the Ghost Squadron. The ship was small and fast. Its hull was made from stolen Dominion technology, coated with material that absorbed sensors. To enemy ships, it was invisible. Target in range, his pilot reported. Dominion supply convoy. 12 ships. No military escort. Tai-ho nodded. Destroy them all. No survivors. No signals. The Shadow and its 5 sister ships struck from the darkness. The convoy never saw them coming. In 4 minutes, 12 Dominion vessels were debris. The Ghost Squadron vanished back into the void before anyone could respond. This was how humanity fought. Not with armies and fleets. Not with grand battles. They fought with shadows and silence. They struck when the enemy felt safe. They killed without mercy. Then they disappeared. The Dominion began to fear them. Soldiers whispered about the human ghosts who could appear anywhere. Supply lines became dangerous. Outposts went silent. Ships vanished without sending distress calls. High Commander Vorath was furious. He sent hunting parties to find the human ships. They found nothing. He increased patrols. The attacks continued. He ordered more destruction on Earth's surface, burning cities and forests. The ghosts struck harder. They should be broken, Vorath said to his officers. We destroyed their colonies. We burned their cities. Why do they keep fighting? No one had an answer. No species had ever resisted like this. Other civilizations would surrender to save what remained. Humans seemed willing to lose everything as long as they could hurt the Dominion in return. Deep in an asteroid facility, Choi Mai-rei worked on her masterpiece. She had not seen sunlight in a year. She had not spoken to her family. She barely slept. But the Cascade device was almost complete. The device was simple in concept but terrible in effect. Dominion ships traveled faster than light using special drives. These drives created a field of unstable energy. Normally, this energy was controlled. But if something disrupted the field, the drive would explode. And if multiple drives were close together, they would trigger each other. A chain reaction. One device can destroy a dozen ships, Mai-rei explained to Admiral Park through a secure channel. If we place them near their fleet gathering points, we can destroy hundreds, maybe thousands. Park was silent for a moment. How many devices do we have? 18. One for each major Dominion staging area in this sector. Can we deliver them? Mai-rei nodded. That is the difficult part. We need someone on the inside. Someone who knows exactly where their fleets gather. The answer came from an unexpected source. Kim Yuna received a secret message on a frequency that should have been impossible to access. The message was simple. I wish to help. Meet me at these coordinates. Yuna was suspicious. It could be a trap. But she recognized the communication style. It was Ambassador Kellis. The meeting happened on a dead moon far from Dominion patrols. Yuna brought guards. Kellis came alone. Why? Yuna asked. Why would you betray your own people? Kellis was quiet for a long time. His dark eyes seemed tired. I have served the Dominion for 300 years. I have delivered the same message to hundreds of species. Submit or be harvested. Most submit. Those who resist are destroyed. I accepted this. I believed it was natural. The strong take from the weak. He looked at Yuna directly. Then I watched what Vorath did to your cities. I watched him laugh as children burned. And I realized something. This is not strength. This is cruelty. I have been serving monsters. You helped them kill billions across the galaxy, Una said coldly. You think helping us fixes that? No, Kella said. Nothing fixes that. But perhaps I can help end it. He handed her a data chip. This contains the locations of every major Dominion fleet, their patrol routes, their command codes, everything you need. Una took the chip. If this is a trap, I will personally make sure you suffer. It is not a trap. I want them to fall. I want to watch everything we build burn. Kella smiled bitterly. Consider it my retirement. Meanwhile, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, ancient beings observed. They were known as the Watchers. They had existed for millions of years. They did not interfere with younger species. They only watched and recorded. One Watcher spoke to another, communicating in ways that had no words. The humans interest me. Most harvested species accept their fate. They fight briefly, then submit or die. These humans are different. They are losing, the other Watcher noted. Their planet burns. Their people hide underground. Their ships are few. Yes, but look at what they are building. Look at how they fight. They do not seek to survive. They seek to make the Dominion pay a price so high that no one will ever do this again. That is not rational. They cannot win. The first Watcher was silent for a moment. Perhaps we have forgotten what young species can do when they have nothing left to lose. On Earth, the remaining surface cities continued to burn. Vorath ordered destruction after destruction, trying to break human will. Forests became ash. Lakes became steam. The blue planet was becoming black and gray. But in the underground bunkers, in the hidden asteroid bases, in the small ships that moved like ghosts through enemy space, humanity prepared its answer. They had counted their dead. They had remembered every name. They had built their weapons with steady hands and cold hearts. Admiral Park Do-hyun received the final report. 18 Cascade devices ready. Fleet positions confirmed. Ghost Squadron in position for the distraction attack. He looked at a hologram of Earth, scarred, burning, but still alive. They thought fear would make us submit, he said quietly to himself. They did not understand. They did not kill our hope. They killed our mercy. He opened a channel to all human commanders. Begin final preparations. We strike in 72 hours. The stars did not know what was coming, but they would learn, and they would never forget. Every surviving human vessel gathered at a hidden point in the Oort cloud. There were warships built in secret. There were cargo ships converted into weapon carriers. There were small fighters piloted by volunteers who knew they would not come home. In total, 843 ships. Against the Dominion's thousands, it was nothing. But these ships carried something more dangerous than weapons. They carried 2 years of human rage. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity. Around him, screens showed the faces of every ship commander. Young faces, old faces. Faces marked by loss and hardened by hatred. He had known some of them for decades. Others he had never met. Today, they were all the same. They were humanity's answer. I will not give you a long speech, Park said. You know why we are here. You know what they took from us. Mars, Sol, our families, our future. He paused. Today, we take something from them. Not land, not resources. We take their belief that they are safe. We teach them what happens when you try to harvest humanity. He looked at the stars on his screen. Somewhere out there, the Dominion waited. They thought they had won. They thought humans were broken animals hiding in holes. Some of us will not come back, Park continued. But those who survive will tell the story. And the galaxy will remember. They will remember that we did not submit. They will remember what we did today. and they will never try this again. Commander Lee Taiho's face appeared on the screen. The Ghost Squadron was already in position near Vorath's flagship. "Admiral, we are ready. On your order." Park nodded. "You know what this means. The distraction must hold long enough for the cascade devices to activate. There will be no retreat." Taiho smiled. It was a cold smile, but there was peace in his eyes. He had made his decision months ago. He had recorded messages for people who might survive. He had said goodbye to the person he used to be. "I grew up in Seoul," Taiho said. "My parents are still there, in the ash. I will join them today, but I will not join them alone. I will bring many Dominion soldiers with me. Godspeed, Commander. Godspeed, Admiral. Make them pay." The Ghost Squadron attacked first. 20 small ships against a fleet of 200. They came from the darkness without warning, striking Vorath's defensive fleet. Dominion ships exploded. Alarms screamed. Vorath shouted orders. "It is the ghosts!" Finally, they show themselves. Destroy them all. The Dominion fleet turned to face the attack. Hundreds of ships chasing 20. They did not notice the small devices drifting silently toward their staging areas across the sector. They did not realize that the ghosts were not trying to win. They were buying time. On a distant asteroid, Choi Mireille sat at her control panel. She watched the battle on her screen. She saw Taiho's ships fighting and dying. She counted the minutes. "Devices in position," her assistant reported. "All 18 staging areas covered." Mireille nodded. Her hand hovered over the activation switch. This button would change history. It would end hundreds of thousands of lives in seconds. She thought about Seoul. She thought about Mars. She thought about the 2,000 civilizations the Dominion had destroyed. "No more," she whispered. Then she pressed the button. Across 18 star systems, the cascade devices activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The unstable energy fields around Dominion faster than light drives suddenly destabilized. Ships exploded. The explosions triggered nearby ships. Those ships triggered others. Chain reactions spread through entire fleets in seconds. High Commander Vorath was still focused on the ghost ships when his officer screamed, "Commander, we are receiving reports from all sectors. Our fleets." "They are." The screen filled with distress calls. "Staging Area 7, all ships destroyed. Staging Area 12, catastrophic losses. Staging Area 3, no survivors." One by one, the markers went dark. 18 staging areas. 600,000 ships. Gone. Vorath stared at the screen in disbelief. This was impossible. No species had ever done this. The Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. They could not be defeated by animals. "Get me a communication link to the human commander," he ordered. His voice was shaking. "Now." Admiral Park appeared on Vorath's screen. The old human looked tired but calm. You have destroyed our fleet," Vorath said. "Do you understand what you have done? This is not war. This is extinction. You have killed millions." Park's expression did not change. "Yes. Why?" "We would have let some of you survive. You could have lived as servants. Now you will have nothing." Park leaned forward. His eyes were cold as dead stars. "You burned Seoul. You burned Mars. You killed our children and laughed. You thought we would count the cost and decide to surrender. You were wrong. This is madness. No, this is revenge, and we are not finished." The remaining human fleet struck the Dominion forces around Earth. Without their main fleets, the Dominion ships were overwhelmed. They fought bravely, but it was not enough. One by one, they fell. Commander Taiho's ship was hit during the final battle. Fire spread through the hull. His crew was dead. He was dying. But he managed one last act. He aimed his broken ship at Vorath's flagship and fired his engines. The collision tore through Varth's command center. The High Commander of the Dominion died instantly, along with his senior officers. The enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds was gone, killed by one man who refused to stop fighting. Across the galaxy, species watched in shock. They had felt the cascade. They had seen the Dominion markers disappear. They had heard the distress calls suddenly go silent. 73% of the Dominion military had been destroyed in 1 hour. The largest single loss of life in recorded galactic history. And then, slowly, something strange happened. Communications across the galaxy went quiet. Trade negotiations stopped mid-sentence. Territorial disputes were forgotten. Political discussions ended. Everyone was listening. Everyone was afraid. The young species that the Dominion had dismissed as animals had done the impossible. They had broken the unbreakable. They had made the conquerors pay a price beyond imagination. Kim Yuna monitored the silence from her station on Earth. For 2 years, she had listened to the galaxy's constant noise. Now, there was nothing. Just static and fear. What did we do? She whispered. Kellis stood beside her. The former ambassador looked at the empty screens with strange satisfaction. You taught them something they forgot long ago. You taught them that some species should not be touched. Some species fight back. Yuna shook her head. We killed so many. Even now, the chain reactions are still spreading. More ships are dying. Yes, and tomorrow, when any species thinks about harvesting another, they will remember this day. They will remember what happened to the Dominion, and they will choose differently. Kellis looked at her. You did not just save yourselves. You changed the rules of the galaxy. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood alone on the bridge of the Unity. The battle was over. The enemy was broken. He should have felt victory. Instead, he felt empty. He thought about Taiho, who had died to kill Varth. He thought about the thousands of human pilots who would never come home. He thought about the millions of Dominion soldiers who had families somewhere, who had lives they would never return to. Sir, an officer said quietly, what are your orders? Park was silent for a long time. Then he said, tell the fleet to stand down. Begin rescue operations. If any Dominion survivors want to surrender, accept them. Sir, the war is over. We have made our point. He looked at Earth through the window. The planet was scarred and burned, but it was still there. Still alive. Now we have to learn how to live with what we have done. 1 year had passed since the day the stars screamed. Kim Yuna sat in her office, listening to the galaxy. Before the war, space had been noisy. Ships talked to each other. Species argued over territory. Traders made deals. Politicians made threats. Now there was almost nothing. Just silence and static. Anything today? Her assistant asked. Yuna shook her head. The same as yesterday. A few cargo ships reporting positions. Some automated signals. Nothing else. She looked at her screens with tired eyes. They are afraid to speak. Afraid we might be listening. This was what humanity had done. They had not just destroyed the Dominion's fleet. They had broken something in the galaxy's mind. For 10,000 years, the strong had taken from the weak. It was the natural order. Everyone accepted it. Now, that order was gone. And no one knew what would replace it. Kellis worked with humans now. He had nowhere else to go. The remaining Dominion forces wanted him dead for his betrayal. He spent his days helping Yuna understand intercepted communications. The Dominion is collapsing, he reported. Without their fleet, they cannot control their territory. The slave species are revolting. Regions that submitted centuries ago are breaking free. An empire of 2,000 years is dying. Good, Yuna said. But her voice was flat. She did not feel satisfaction anymore. She had seen too many death reports, heard too many final transmissions. Victory was supposed to feel better than this. On Earth, the rebuilding had begun. President Han Ji-woo oversaw the recovery. Underground bunkers were slowly emptying. People were returning to the surface. But the planet they found was not the one they remembered. Great forests had become ash deserts. Beautiful cities were ruins. The sky was gray with dust that would take decades to clear. Children who had been born underground looked up at the clouds and asked what blue was. Han walked through a new settlement near what used to be Seoul. Families were building homes from recycled materials. Children played in streets made of compressed rubble. Life was continuing. Humanity was surviving. But something had changed. She could see it in people's eyes. A hardness that had not been there before. These were people who had watched their world burn and had burned others in return. They would never be the same. President Han, a young soldier, approached her. "Admiral Park is asking for you." She found Park at the memorial site. A simple wall of black stone stood in the center of the old city. Names were carved into it. Millions of names. The wall was not big enough, so they had added more walls. And more. A maze of names stretching across the ash. Park stood before the wall, reading the names. He looked older than he had before the war. His hand shook slightly. He did not sleep well anymore. "I come here every week," he said when Han approached. I read the names. I tried to remember that each one was a person. Someone's child. Someone's parent. Someone's friend. Han stood beside him. "You did what was necessary. You saved our species. Did I?" Park turned to look at her. "We killed hundreds of thousands in the final attack. The chain reactions we started are still spreading. Ships are still exploding in distant systems. Some of them might be civilian vessels, traders, families." He looked back at the wall. "We became what they were. We became harvesters." Han was silent for a moment. "What would you have done differently?" Park thought about it. He thought about Seoul burning, about Mars dying, about Taiho's final flight into Varath's ship. "Nothing," he finally said. "I would do it all again. That is what frightens me. I would kill them all again without hesitation." "What does that make me?" "Human," Han said quietly. "It makes you human. We are capable of great love and great destruction." They learned the second part. Now we must prove the first. The United Earth Council established new rules. They called it the Park Doctrine. Humanity would never strike first. They would explore peacefully. They would offer friendship to all. But any attack on human life would be answered with complete destruction. No negotiations. No second chances. No mercy. Some called it cruel. Others called it necessary. The truth was somewhere in between. Far from Earth, the Watchers observed. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They had seen empires conquer and empires collapse. But they had never seen anything quite like this. "The humans interest me," one watcher said. "They were peaceful once. They wanted only to explore and learn. The Dominion turned them into warriors." "They were always warriors," another watcher replied. "The capacity was always there. The Dominion simply awakened it." The Watchers decided to break their ancient silence. For the first time in recorded history, they sent a message to a younger species. It arrived on Kim Yuna's screen one morning. "You have been observed. You have been measured. The galaxy will remember what you are capable of." This is not a threat. It is acknowledgement. Yuna stared at the message for a long time. Then she showed it to Kellis. He read it twice. "The Watchers have spoken to you," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "They have never spoken to anyone. In 10,000 years of Dominion history, they never sent a single word. You have done something remarkable. We killed a lot of people, Una said. That is all we did. No, you changed the rules. You proved that the strong cannot simply take from the weak. You proved that there is a price for cruelty. Callus looked at her with something like respect. The galaxy will be different now. Because of you, 20 years passed. Earth healed slowly. The skies cleared. New forests grew. Children learned about the war in schools. They learned about Mars and Sol. They learned about the Ghost Squadron and Commander Taiho's final flight. They learned about the day humanity answered cruelty with devastation. Admiral Park Do-hyun died peacefully in his sleep. His last words were the names of his fallen soldiers. They built a statue of him at the memorial, but those who knew him said he would have hated it. Choi Myra returned to space exploration. She designed new ships meant for science, not war. She never spoke about the Cascade devices. When asked about them, she simply walked away. President Han Ji-woo retired and wrote a book about the war. It was honest. It did not celebrate victory. It mourned the cost on both sides. It became the most read book in human history. And then, 30 years after the silence began, something changed. Kim Yuna was old now. Her hair was white. Her eyes were tired. But she still came to her station every day. She still listened to the stars. And one morning, she heard something new. A probe had entered the solar system. It was small and simple. It carried a message. Yuna decoded it with shaking hands. We come seeking friendship. We have heard of Earth. We wish only peace. We hope you will respond. It was signed by a species from a distant system. A species that had heard about humanity. About what they had done to the Dominion. About what they were capable of doing. And they had come anyway. With hope instead of threats. With friendship instead of demands. Yuna sat back in her chair. For the first time in 30 years, she felt tears on her face. Not tears of grief. Tears of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. She wrote her response carefully. Simple words that carried the weight of everything humanity had learned. We receive your message with joy. We are honored by your friendship. We promise you peace, as long as peace is what you bring. Welcome to our corner of the stars. She sent the message and looked at the screen. The stars were speaking again. And this time, they were polite. Outside her window, children played in the rebuilt streets of Seoul. They did not know about the ash that had once covered this ground. They did not know about the fire that had fallen from the sky. They only knew that this was home, that they were safe, that somewhere out there, the stars were filled with possibilities. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and humanity had learned theirs. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth destroying for. But in the end, the best victories were the ones that led back to peace. Yuna smiled as she watched the children play. The war was truly over, and the future, finally, had begun.